Hello everyone, viewers. We often picture the guardians of heaven as stern warriors, clad in armor, their faces set like stone. We think of Michael, the celestial general, his sword a vessel of righteous fury. We think of Gabriel, the messenger, his voice a trumpet of divine decree. But what if one of the most powerful archangels, a being present at the very dawn of creation, wielded a What if the angel who stood at the gates of a lost paradise, barring humanity from its birthright, was not an executioner of wrath, but a custodian of a truth so overwhelmingly beautiful it could shatter the very fabric of a mortal soul? Today, we are not talking about a warrior. We are talking about an artist, a philosopher, a whisper of inspiration. We are talking about the Archangel Jophiel, and her story will change everything you thought you knew about the Garden of Eden, the fall of man, and the secret power hidden within God's infinite wisdom. Before the concept of time had even been born, when existence was a canvas of pure potential, there was Jophiel. She was not forged in the fires of cosmic battles, nor was she designed as a mere messenger. Jophiel was the first thought of beauty in the mind of the Creator. When God spoke the words, "Let there be light," Jophiel was the one who perceived its spectrum, who understood the dance of photons, the elegance in the wave and the particle. She saw the perfect geometry in the forming of galaxies, the breathtaking artistry in the swirl of nebulae. For her, creation was not just a series of events, it was the ultimate masterpiece, and her purpose was to perceive. She walked among the nascent stars, her presence a silent hum of appreciation. While other angels were learning the hymns of praise or the laws of physics, Jophiel was learning the language of form, the rhythm of existence. She saw the mathematical precision of a blooming flower, not as cold logic, but as a love letter written in the language of the universe. This was her domain, not of might, but of and nowhere was this divine artistry more concentrated, more potent, than in a small, perfect corner of a newly formed world called Earth. It was a garden, but to call it a garden is to call a cathedral a building. It was Eden. For Jophiel, Eden was not a place of containment, it was a sanctuary of pure, unfiltered beauty. It was the heart of the masterpiece. Every element existed in the light that filtered through the canopy of the trees was the color of liquid gold. The water in its rivers ran with the clarity of liquid crystal. The air itself was thick with the scent of life, a perfume of blossoms and rich earth that spoke of endless potential. Animals moved without fear, their forms a testament to the Creator's boundless imagination. It was a living, breathing work of art. Jophiel's duty, she would walk the winding paths, her touch encouraging a vine to climb in a perfect spiral, her gaze inspiring a flower to unfold its petals in a display of impossible color. She understood the silent conversation between the roots of the trees and the mycelial networks beneath the soil. She felt the joy of a lion cub taking its first steps and the quiet contentment of the ancient mountains that watched over the valley. The tree of life, shimmering with an emerald glow, pulsed with the raw, untamed energy of eternal existence. It was beautiful, yes, but its beauty was straightforward, a declaration of divine power. But it was the other tree that held Jophiel's focus, the one that held the true secret of the garden, the tree of the knowledge of good and evil, to the nascent minds of Adam and Eve. It was a prohibition. To taste it was to have the entirety of God's wisdom, the blueprint of creation itself, poured directly into the soul. It was the knowledge of every possibility, every timeline, every joy, every agony. It was the understanding of why a star must die to create life, why a predator must hunt to maintain balance, why love must coexist with loss. It was the terrible, magnificent, and utterly overwhelming. They reflected the beauty of the garden, but they had no context, no depth to contain the torrential influx of this ultimate truth. The knowledge from the tree was not a poison, it was an ocean, and to force an ocean into a drinking glass would not just fill the glass, it would shatter it into a million pieces. This was the secret Jophiel guarded. The prohibition was not a test of obedience in the way a parent tells a child not to touch a hot stove. Her love for humanity was not one of condescension, but of a master artist protecting her most precious and most fragile creations. She watched them, their laughter echoing through the serene landscape, their innocence a thing of such profound beauty it made her ache. She knew what they were and what they could become. But she also knew the cost of that becoming, and so she watched over the tree, her presence a silent warning. Her heart filled, for she knew, with the perfect clarity of her wisdom, that the harmony of the garden was destined to be broken. The first discordant note in the symphony of creation came not from the world of flesh and soil, but from the realm of light and spirit. It began as a whisper in the celestial choirs, a subtle shift in the harmony. It came from Lucifer, the light bringer, the most brilliant of all the archangels. She had marveled at his radiance, a beauty so intense it was almost a rival to the Creator's own. But where Jophiel saw beauty in harmony and interconnectedness, Lucifer began to see beauty in the self. He saw it in his own reflection, in the power of his own will, in the idea of a single perfect note held above all others, drowning out the symphony. Their conversations held in courts of starlight, and on the shore, "Look at this grand design, Jophiel," Lucifer would argue, his voice like the chiming of crystal bells. "It is beautiful, I grant you, but it is static. It is a painting, perfect but unchanging. True beauty lies in action, in ambition, in becoming more than what one was made to be." Jophiel would counter, her voice calm and resonant like the hum of the earth. "You mistake change for improvement, Lucifer. The beauty you seek is the beauty of the ego, a fire that consumes everything to fuel itself. True beauty is the beauty of the whole, the quiet dance where every part supports the others. It is a forest, not a bonfire." But Lucifer could no longer see the forest. He was mesmerized by the flame. He saw God's plan not as a symphony, but as a cage. He believed that the ultimate expression of beauty was absolute. The rebellion that followed was not merely a clash of swords and shields. It was a clash of philosophies. When Michael drew his sword, a blade of pure righteous fire, it was a necessary, brutal act. It was the surgeon's knife cutting away a cancer. But Jophiel's role was different. She did not raise a weapon. Her heart broke as she watched the heavens fracture. She saw the ugliness of pride, the discord of rebellion. She saw angels, once radiant beings of light, twist themselves into shapes of rage and despair, their beauty corrupted into something monstrous. She understood with agonizing clarity the why behind it all. She saw the tragic beauty in Lucifer's choice face the terrifying, awe-inspiring power of free will. It was the first truly unpredictable note in God's creation, and while it was a cacophony of horror, this was the wisdom she carried, a burden that Michael in his righteous fury could never comprehend. Jophiel understood the necessity of the fall. It was this profound, painful understanding that prepared her for the tragedy that was to come. For she knew the echo of Lucifer's pride, the whisper of self-aggrandizement, had not been contained in heaven. It had found its way to the perfect little garden on earth, and the serpent's words to Eve were a twisted reflection of Lucifer's own arguments. "You can be as gods." It was the same song, just in a different key. The promise of knowledge was not a lie. The fruit would indeed open their eyes. What the serpent failed to mention was the cost. When Eve and then Adam ate the fruit, Jophiel felt it not as a sound, but as a shattering. The perfect harmony of Eden was broken. In a single blinding moment, they saw everything. They saw the cycle of birth and death. They saw the predator and the prey. They saw the inevitability of decay, the reality of pain, the shadow of their own mortality. They saw the good, the potential for love, sacrifice, and art. But it was hopelessly entangled with the evil, the capacity for hatred, betrayal, and war. The beauty of the grand is, and with that terror came the first seeds of ugliness in the human heart. Shame, fear, and blame. They covered their bodies not because they were naked, but because for the first time they saw themselves as flawed, as separate from the perfect garden around them. They hid from God, not because of what they had done, but because of what they now knew. The command from the throne of heaven was swift and absolute. They could not remain. It was not if humanity in their new, fractured state, aware of their own mortality and tormented by it, were to eat from that tree, they would be sealed in that state of suffering for eternity, an endless life of fear, shame, and spiritual agony. That would be the ultimate cruelty. The expulsion from Eden was the most profound act of mercy they would ever know. It was Jophiel who was given the task. Gabriel was the messenger. His words would have been a decree of judgment. It had to be Jophiel. The beauty of God had to be the one to close the door to paradise. She descended, and the very air grew heavy with her sorrow. She found Adam and Eve huddled at the edge of the garden, their eyes wide with a new and terrible understanding. They looked at her, and for the first time they saw not a comforting guide, but a being of... But it was no ordinary sword. It was not forged of celestial metal. The sword was a blade of pure, concentrated truth. It blazed with a light that was not hot, but illuminating. It was the physical manifestation of the knowledge they had consumed, a flame that burned away all illusion. It was beautiful, and it was terrifying, and it was the perfect instrument for the task. She did not speak words of condemnation. They saw the long, hard road that now lay before them. Her beauty was now a judgment, a mirror showing them their own brokenness. With a single, graceful and heartbreaking motion, she pointed the way out, east of Eden, away from the tree of life, away from their innocence. As they stumbled out into the harsh, untamed world, Jophiel stood at the gate. The flaming sword in her hand was a seal, a promise. Until they had journeyed through the wilderness of their own making, until they had learned to find beauty in imperfection, to forge wisdom from suffering, and to build their own gardens, however flawed. In a fallen world, Jophiel, the guardian of beauty, now stood as the guardian of a painful memory and a distant hope, her vigil at the edge of paradise having only just begun. The loss of Eden sent ripples throughout. She was no longer the passive curator of a perfect garden, but an active, though often invisible, force in the chaotic world of humanity. Her mission was now one of restoration, not of the garden itself, but of the perception of beauty and wisdom within the human soul. She could not interfere directly. The path of free will, once chosen, had to be walked. But she could inspire. She became a whisper on the wind of... Her influence is not recorded in the grand battles and epic prophecies of Scripture, but it can be found in the spaces between the lines. Consider Solomon, a king renowned for a wisdom so profound, it was said to be a direct gift from God. When he was tasked with building the first temple in Jerusalem, a dwelling place for the divine on earth, who guided the minds of the architects and artisans, she whispered the secrets of sacred geometry, the principles of harmony and proportion that would turn stone and wood into a place of true spiritual resonance. She helped them understand that the temple's beauty was not in the gold that adorned it or the cedar that framed it, but in the way its design could quiet the mind and elevate the spirit, creating a faint echo of the harmony that was lost in Eden. The intricate carvings of pomegranates and lilies, the precise alignment with the celestial bodies, these were Jophiel's fingerprints, a reminder that the beauty of God could still be found, and even built, in a broken world. Centuries later, as civilizations rose and fell, humanity entered periods of profound darkness. The world became a place of grime, plague, and dogmatic fear. Think of the Renaissance, a sudden, explosive rebirth of art, science, and philosophy. A sculptor in Florence suddenly sees the divine form hidden within a raw block of marble. A painter in Rome discovers the secret of perspective, learning to create not just a flat image, but a window into another world. Where did this sudden flood of inspiration come from? It was She taught the artists to see the sacred in the profane, to find the beauty of God not just in images of saints and angels, but in the face of an ordinary person, in the play of light on a piece of fabric, in the muscular tension of the human body. She was guiding them to rediscover a fundamental truth, that humanity, though fallen, was still made in the image of the divine, and was therefore a vessel of profound beauty. It helped heal the wound of shame that had festered since the garden. If you've ever felt a sense of awe looking at a masterpiece, a sense of connection to something greater than yourself, you have felt the touch of Jophiel. She is the muse of the poet struggling for the perfect word, the insight of the scientist who suddenly perceives an elegant solution to a complex problem, the comfort of the musician who finds a melody that can express a wordless sorrow. She is the quiet gardener of the human soul, tending to the fragile seeds of wisdom and beauty, hoping that one day they will blossom into something that can withstand the full, unfiltered light of truth. If you believe that art and knowledge can be a pathway to the divine, that a moment of creative insight can feel like a sacred experience, Then you understand Jophiel's mission, and if this exploration of the hidden forces in it helps us continue to uncover these profound stories that exist just beneath the surface of what we think we know. But Jophiel's gifts, like any great power, carry a shadow. The beauty she inspires and the wisdom she nurtures are pure in their source, but they can be easily corrupted by the flawed vessel of the human ego. This is the nightmare aspect of her domain, the dark reflection of her divine purpose. This is the trap of Narcissus, who saw only his own reflection and starved, unable to connect with the world around him. It is the folly of societies that prioritize superficial aesthetics over justice and compassion, creating beautiful facades that hide ugly truths, a culture that worships youth and physical perfection while discarding the old and the infirm is a culture that has taken Jophiel's gift of appreciating the beauty becomes a prison, a standard against which everyone is judged and found wanting, a source of endless anxiety and self-loathing. It is beauty divorced from soul, and it is an empty, desolate thing. Even more dangerous, however, is the pursuit of wisdom without beauty. This leads to the cold, sterile logic of tyranny. It is knowledge untempered by empathy, intelligence without... The architects of holocausts were often intelligent men. They used logic, efficiency, and knowledge of science and bureaucracy to enact their horrors. They had knowledge, but they had lost the ability to see the divine beauty in every human life. Their wisdom was a monstrous, disfigured thing, a weapon used to justify the unjustifiable. They could not hear the symphony. They could only count the instruments they were about to destroy. Here was humanity united, using their collective knowledge and architectural skill to build a monument to their own greatness. They sought to build a tower that would reach heaven itself. It was an act of immense creativity and intelligence. From a purely technical standpoint, it was beautiful, but its foundation was pride. Its purpose was not to honor God, but to usurp his power, to make a name for themselves. It was the echo of the punishment was far more subtle and far more profound. He confused their language. He shattered their ability to communicate, to understand one another. He turned their unity into division, their cooperation into suspicion. The great project collapsed not from an external force, but from its own internal corruption. Jophiel witnessed this with that same familiar, aching sorrow. She saw the confusion of tongues was a tragic necessity. It was a way of preventing a unified humanity corrupted by pride from doing even greater damage to themselves and to the world. It was a reset, forcing them back into smaller tribes, smaller communities, where they would have to relearn the basics of empathy and understanding on a smaller scale before they could dream of reaching for the heavens again. This is the eternal struggle. For every artist she inspires to create a masterpiece that elevates the human spirit. There is another who uses their talent to create propaganda that dehumanizes an enemy. For every scientist who makes a breakthrough that can heal the sick, there is another who uses their knowledge to build a more efficient weapon. Her gifts are neutral. The flaming sword of knowledge can be used to cut away illusion, or it can be used to carve the... Jophiel can only watch and wait, and continue to whisper the secrets of true beauty, the beauty of harmony, of empathy, of wisdom, into the hearts of those who are willing to listen. So we return to the gate, to the image of the angel with the flaming sword. For millennia, that image has been interpreted as one of punishment, of a divine guard keeping unworthy sinners out. But with our new understanding, we must see that sword not as a weapon of exclusion, but as an instrument of transformation. It is time to understand the wisdom of the sword. The flame is not a fire of destruction. It is the fire of purification, the light of absolute truth. It is the concentrated essence of the knowledge from the tree, burning with an intensity that would incinerate any falsehood, any illusion, any trace of ego. It is to be stripped bare to your essential self. It is a terrifying prospect, and one for which the innocent Adam and Eve were utterly unprepared. The sword itself is not an instrument of violence. A sword in its essence is a tool that divides, that separates. This sword, the sword of Jophiel's wisdom, is the ultimate arbiter of discernment. It is the sharp edge that separates truth from lies, wisdom from mere knowledge, and true beauty from superficial glamour. To pass the sword is to have your soul weighed and measured, to have every motive scrutinized, every thought laid bare. It is the final exam for the soul. The gate Jophiel guards, therefore, is not a permanent barrier. It is a threshold, and the flaming sword is not a threat. The long journey east of Eden, the journey through suffering, joy, love, loss, creation, and destruction, is the process by which the human soul is slowly prepared to face that blade. Every act of kindness, every moment of genuine empathy, every creation of true beauty, every discovery of profound wisdom, forges the soul, making it stronger, purer, more able to withstand the purifying fire. It is the path of enlightenment, the journey of the spirit. She is the guardian of a higher state of consciousness, a level of being where one can perceive the totality of God's plan, the terrible beauty of it all, without being shattered. She is waiting for us to learn the lesson of Eden, that true wisdom is not about knowing everything, but about understanding our place in the symphony. It's about learning to love the music of creation. The secret power of God's wisdom, the secret that Jophiel has guarded since the dawn of time, is this: the paradise we seek is not a garden we were cast out of. It is a state of being we are evolving towards. The flaming sword is not a barrier to that paradise. It is the very tool of its construction, for it is what shapes our souls into something worthy of entering it. Jophiel's vigil is one of infinite patience. She holds the sword not as a jailer, but as a gatekeeper to our own highest potential, waiting for the day we can walk through the flames, not to be consumed, but to be illuminated. In our modern lives, the garden can feel more distant than ever. We are surrounded by a world that often celebrates the superficial, rewards the selfish, and confuses information with wisdom. The noise of our daily existence can we can find her in the moments of stillness when we truly appreciate the beauty of a sunset. We can feel her touch in the surge of inspiration that allows us to solve a problem or create something new. She is present in the profound connection we feel when we are moved by a piece of music, a poem, or a work of art that seems to speak directly to our soul. The healing that Jophiel offers is the healing of perspective. She teaches us to combat the ugliness of the world. She doesn't call us to wage war, but to create beauty. To combat the ignorance of the world, she doesn't call us to preach, but to seek understanding. The guidance she provides is a path of balance. It is the path of the artist, philosopher, the scientist, poet. It is the understanding that our intellectual pursuits must be balanced with compassion. To connect with the energy of Jophiel is to actively choose to bring more beauty and wisdom into your own life, and by extension into the world. It means choosing to learn something new every day. It means taking the time to create, whether that's painting a canvas, writing a journal, planting a garden, or even just preparing a meal with love and intention. It means learning to see the beauty in other people, especially those who are different from us. It means it is a living metaphor for our own spiritual journey. We have all been cast out of the garden of our own innocence. We all face a world filled with challenges and shadows, and we all have a choice. We can curse the darkness, or we can become, in our own small way, a reflection of the beauty of God. We can learn to wield our own small flaming sword, the sword of our consciousness, of our awareness, to cut away our own. Jophiel's vigil continues, but she does not watch alone. She watches with the hope that we, her most fragile and beloved creations, will finally learn the lesson of the garden and begin the long, beautiful journey home. Alright, that is all for today's video. If you liked this video and our deep dive into the mythology of one of heaven's most mysterious archangels, please subscribe and give it a like to support us.